And I want to hear from you on this. On the 14th of February, a month ago, KRA issued an exemption of duty on specific imports and quantities, which tasked your agency, the Kenya National Trading Corporation Limited, as the anchor agency to support price stabilization through duty-free importation. And I've got a list of the products that are supposed to come in through that duty-free importation. I want to start from understanding from you the wheat part, because that's actually what we're discussing as well in regards to that story. 25,000 metric tons of wheat was approved as per this notice. Where are we in regards to that, and how is it being handled?
Okay, thank you, Ahiga, for inviting me here. The 25,000 metric tons of wheat actually listed in that list was a donation from the Ukraine government to Kenya. It's coming in through WFP, and the only thing we were facilitating was a duty-free to enable the clearing of the wheat once it arrives here. So as KNTC, we were mandated as the agency to facilitate WFP to be able to bring in the wheat into the country.
Okay, it's a bit confusing because the notice seems to show that there was 25,000 through KNTC and then another further 25,000 through a donation from the Republic of Ukraine.
Actually, it's the same thing, because when we applied, we just applied for the 25,000 metric tons, which is exact donation that is coming through from the Ukraine.
Okay, let's talk a bit about the other products as well. 80,000 metric tons of beans.
Yes.
Where are we with that?
Okay, when we started this process around December, we were going to bring all these food items. So we were waiting for this notice to come through. So we're in the process of sourcing for the commodities. Beans coming in from different parts of Africa. I think we're looking at Tanzania, Ethiopia, and rice. We've already started receiving some of the rice from India, because it takes a shorter time to come through, and cooking oil and fat, which will be arriving maybe around April, based on the manufacturing plans that we have in place.
I want to understand from you, as the sole agency mandated by government to import, procurement agent for the government, and that's what I saw on your website. Over the weekend, the Deputy President spoke to the maize and wheat crisis that we have in the country. And some of the things that he said is, number one, cheap maize is not available anywhere in the world. The only maize available is from South Africa, where there's a competition with other countries for that. And the maize in Brazil is too expensive to import because of the particular distance. Is that something your agency is aware of? And what are those particular challenges? Are you able to give us a few more specific details?
Okay, so in this play for sourcing for food, as you know, the country is going through various issues. There's drought, which is affecting certain parts of the country, and there's also the high cost of living. So from a policy perspective, I think what we have done is we have focused on how can we improve production. So there's some short-term measures, and there's long-term measures. So for long-term, we have invested in fertilizer, and I think you know that I'm the agency that has brought in fertilizer, buying both locally and importing, and we have already started distribution to farmers with a focus of the next 6 or so months to get a bumper harvest, of course, and then having strategic food reserves. So that is just one strategy that we're employing. The second one is the short-term gap, because we have to address the drought situation, we have to address the cost of living, and hence perhaps why you'd ask why we got a duty-free and not play in the same space where, in the competitive space where everyone else is playing in private sector. But the key focus is it's a short-term. It's not something that has been granted to KNTC. We've been in this business, we've been paying duty, we've been paying taxes, but because there's a need that is specific at this time in moment, we are looking at how do we bring in these commodities and how do we address the bottom of the pyramid to ensure the person who is there's a pain point can be able to at least weather the storm until the government is able to have enough strategic food reserves of maize or otherwise to be able to bring the cost, especially of the maize flour, down.
And these commodities, when I jump in, and of course they are of a sizable nature, rice 150,000 metric tons, cooking oil 125,000 metric tons. Which companies are you working with who are given the responsibility of importing?
Okay, so as KNTC, we've been in this trade for a long time, and what we're looking for is a hybrid situation. So we have some local companies, many that we are working with, and we've also brought 25,
is it 15, is it?
Well, let's say
specifics would help.
Yeah, well, we've tried to bring quantities, smaller quantities, so that we can be assured of supply. Because giving one person a huge quantities, if they fail, then the whole project is at risk. So we are looking at around 12 or 13 kind of different suppliers. Some with specialty in beans, others in specialty in rice, others in specialty in cooking oil. So we have spread ourselves in that sense, so that we do not focus on only one supplier or rely on one supplier. The other thing I know is how are we going to distribute this food? It's also a key part of this,
Before we even get to distribution, and that was actually my next question. Yes. What was the criteria for selecting these companies?
Okay, what we've done is, as a trading company, we follow the procurement laws, and there are different methods available for us, depending on the situation. We have open tender, which is when you have time. I think if you have 4 or 5 months that you want to be able to procure goods. There's restricted tender, and of course there's direct sourcing. Of course, all this based on the procurement law that we are guided by. We need sometimes exemptions or approvals to be able to do that. So because, as I've said, this was a short-term gap, you understand the situation that the government is. It's sort of like an emergency where we have sort of dealing with drought and, of course, the cost of living. We've used, any of those three.
Which mainly? Is it direct sourcing that was mainly?
No, we actually used restricted tender.
Okay.
Yes.
Which is guided by what?
The PPRA law. Yeah. The Public Procurement and Disposal Act, 2015 and 2022. Because
of the challenges that previous governments have faced in terms of the question of open and transparent tendering, and there are many who say that unless it's open tendering, these other methods are open to manipulation. Okay. What guarantees can you give Kenyans tonight that there was no manipulation, there was no favoring, there was no bias in the method that you chose to give these quantities? Yeah,
there is what I would assure Kenyans is they wait till they see the food on the table. When we actually go to the retail, one of the things, and why KNTC was chosen to do this as a government body, is because of the assurance that we will be able to land this at a lower price than what is in the market. And that is the assurance I want to give you. The other thing, Wahiga, you might know is that in December, the government also gazetted to the private sector. The private players were given 600,000 metric tons of rice. I don't know whether you're aware about that, and 500,000 metric tons of maize. KNTC did not play in that. So it will be good for us to compare what the private sector will land it at versus what KNTC will come through.
So speaking of the same in that, the distribution part of it, which you are going to get into, between you and organizations and another parastatal like the National Cereals and Produce Board, who is in charge of distributing these foodstuffs across the country?
Okay, so NCPB has a wider network for fertilizer, and we've modeled fertilizer in a different way, the way we've modeled the food commodities. So with fertilizer, we've gone through the NCPB stores, and if you, we've worked on a model which is more digital. So actually NCPB centers are only collection centers, and through counties that, we are present, where we are distributing fertilizers, some counties have actually given us stores where we can store the fertilizer. There's a lot, there's very little human intervention in this process because everything is system-based. The farmer gets a code, and with that code, they're able to redeem the fertilizer. You may also be aware that in January of this year, the government, working with the Interior Ministry, using sub-chiefs and chiefs, we actually registered over 5 million farmers. And using that data, we've been able to map all farmers at the county level till the ward level. So we are hoping by the short trains, we'll actually be able to open stores at ward level, which will be manned by NCPB staff or even KNTC staff, just so that we can be able to go to the detail of making sure the farmer doesn't have to travel far. This time, I think the last mile could be slightly, maybe 5 kilometers or less for some people, but also because we wanted to test the system and it has proven to work perfectly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm due for a break, but before the break, I need to throw in one question. 2 weeks ago, I believe it was the Daily Nation that reported Kenya National Trading Corporation to borrow a whopping 15 billion from a local commercial bank to fund what ranks as one of the largest and most expensive state-sponsored duty-free import regimes of consumer goods in recent times. Which bank will fund this program?
Okay, so I would gladly say that KCB is the bank we went for, and not because it was the only one, but it, we went into the market to, several banks, and KCB came through with the best rate, I would say. Now, what I would want to say is that we are not borrowing. If you
I was going to ask what collateral you are giving for a loan of that size.
We are not borrowing a loan. What we are doing is using trade finance products. So the best way to buy goods, especially if you're buying from out of the country, is to use an LC. And so for most of our suppliers, we're giving them a letter of credit, and it's not a site credit, just so that I can clarify that. We are getting some days of credit, just so that we can be able to bring the goods. Once the goods are here and they're certified as in the right order, maybe by the the agencies that are required to do so, that is KEBS and the others, then we can be able to say we have actually received good quality goods that are as we had as we had commissioned or as we had ordered. Secondly, is that we have bought ourselves time, 180 days. Just so that we can be able to sell the goods and then be able to pay back. Okay,
I have a lot more questions to ask, but I'm told I do need to take that break. Let's take that break. Thank you for staying with us. Pamela Mutua, the Managing Director, Kenya National Trading Corporation, live with us. Lots to talk about. An organization that right now playing a very critical role as price stabilization of foodstuffs is the big talking point in the country at the moment, in the face of one of the worst droughts that's been seen in a long, long time. What are the solutions? We'll continue with that discussion after the break and other news stories as well. 22422 is the SMS line. The hashtag is Newsnight. We'll be right back after this short break. Here's what's coming up.